Okay, it's been a week since the last video. It's been exciting times here at the mini golf course. You'll see that I've strapped this place up like a crime scene. It's like mini golf forensic files in here. There was some damage over the weekend, which is why I had another video shot, but I was bitching for most of it. But basically on Friday, I laid all the mortar in and I was gonna let it cure over the weekend before I came back and sealed it with the epoxy coating. And sure enough, I came back on Monday and I only had those black barrier ropes, the little like movie theater style barrier ropes up. And of course kids ignore those. And they had destroyed about 2 days worth of what I had done. Just like stomped the mortar out, cracked it, ripped the yellow foam out. Just like brutal destruction to things that are clearly under repair. I don't blame the kids. Kids are idiots. I blame the trash parents for not controlling them. And I basically said all that, but I took about 20 minutes to say it and I used much harsher language. So Corey, once again, talked me into deleting that clip. And I came back and was able to fix everything in about a day. So not that big a deal ultimately. But everything is now repaired except for the St. Louis arch, which I have a special objective on. Remember, I have to make it somehow breakaway. So I've not done the arch yet, but I'm basically done with everything else, and I'll show you some bits and pieces. But everything is sealed. All the holes are patched with the mortar. I'm going back and closing some smaller holes now with really strong silicone caulk. And hopefully today, oh, the other thing that makes this interesting is Corey also reminded me last night, I only have 7 days. I thought I had much more time. I have 7 days to finish this before we go to Montana again to work on the Earthship again. So there's a tiny bit of a rush, but if I can get all of the epoxy coating on today or tomorrow and let it dry and seal, that means I'll be spending the last half of this week just painting. And that's no big deal. So that's the goal. Here we are at the Blue Whale, probably the most popular hole here. I replaced the bill of the cap and I did a couple things differently this time. It was epoxied down last time, but only where it attached to the main hat. And somebody came and grabbed it and tore across the bill, ran off with it. So I aesthetically covered that seam with a little bit of epoxy putty to look like the band across a hat. I'll paint that gold, green, gold, green, gold, green. Also, I glued a majority of the undersurface of the bill to the whale. I'll paint all of that black so it'll just appear like shadow beneath the green bill. You won't even see it. But that's gonna make it really, really tough for somebody to run off with that hat bill. And if they do, I have encased ancient Egyptian scarab beetles underneath there that will jump out and bite them and turn them into mummy monsters. Just in case. Part of the damage that was done over the weekend, here you'll notice all of this mortar, right? Well, I went through the trouble yet again of crafting these two rocks that guard the ramp into the whale's mouth. I did it like I did last time. Yellow foam carved into the shape of a rock and then smeared with this mortar. And then I was gonna put the self-hardening epoxy on the outside of that. And some little kid river danced these rocks all the way down to the base, completely destroyed them. Yellow foam and mortar everywhere. So this time I said, fuck those kids. And I went and got some steel pyramid-shaped fence post toppers. And right now the seams are a little ugly. I'm still working on that because I'm trying to fit them into the footprint of two irregularly shaped rocks. But once I get it all smoothed out and covered and painted, it should look like two little stone pyramid obelisks. And it'll be a hell of a lot more durable. Plus it has the ramp faces that I was trying to get in the first place. So utilize what you've got at the hardware store. Here's the Santa Monica Pier. I'll show you a couple of things that I've done. Check out how well the Ondura is holding up. I think I already said that earlier in the video, but I'm just really impressed with this material. So this time, I had to rebuild one of these piers again. The one I built was built out of PVC, like these were. It's just PVC filled with expanding foam and sculpted with rope wrapped around it. I built one nearly identical, slightly better, if you ask me. But I didn't want to go back and buy one this time, so I just made a cylinder out of some leftover bits of that Ondura. It's a little ugly right now, but I'm gonna get it sculpted and painted. It'll look great. It's the right size, filled it with expanding foam. So I'll cut the top flat and sculpt that, wrap the rope around it, get it all painted to match. And then here you can see what I'm doing with a lot of the missing rock shoulder. I said I'm not gonna build it out again just to get stomped off. So I'm filling in all the gaps. There are just layers of basically yellow expanding foam, plywood, white styrofoam, more yellow expanding foam, all sandwiched together. Those layers are all delaminating and coming apart, and all of the foam is basically deteriorating into powder. So I just packed those gaps with silicone caulk and then mortar over the top of it. And we're gonna paint the epoxy coating directly over the top of this and just try to create as little bit of leverage on that rock shoulder as possible. Visually, it will still look good. It just won't stick out so far from the side. And then on the sign, you can see we're missing a lot of paint here. That's no big deal, I can repaint that. There was a chunk missing out of the front, and I thought about filling it in, but then I just used epoxy putty to seal it up, and I'll paint over it, and it will just be a little piece of natural damage to the sign, which I think will actually add some character. I wanted to go over some of the materials I'm using because people have asked. This is the caulk I'm using, Big Stretch. It's a silicone-based caulk. It's really strong. Like it says, it stretches, it doesn't crack. So it gives like a very cushy, rubbery feel without breaking. It's great. So I've used it in sort of a concentric circle pattern, roughly, over the top of this little pier. Cut the foam off flush, and then made little concentric circles. And you see, hopefully it doesn't stick up too high, it doesn't. So that should give a similar rough appearance to the top of these other piers. So now, I'm gonna work on getting that rope attached using Goop brand glue, which should honestly be a sponsor because I've probably spent thousands of dollars on tubes of this shit over the years. You hear me, Goop? So the first thing I'm gonna do is use the Goop to make a sticky line around the outside of this pier at the level that I want the rope to be at. Now, one thing I've already done is pulled the like core out of this rope. And if you've ever cut rope, you'll notice that many will have a solid core or another type of rope in the core. When you pull that out, the rope becomes much more flexible and thinner, but generally still the same size. That's what we're going for. This rope doesn't have to be strong, it just has to look like rope. So let's make a sticky little ring around this thing. About an inch from the top. And it doesn't matter if the glue runs. This whole thing is going to be painted. And Goop is very easy to work with, very easy to clean up, very easy to smooth out. That's why I buy so damn much of it. It's great. All right, it's running and that's fine. That is absolutely fine. Whoops, that's not fine. This is still gonna do exactly what we need it to. All right, now that it's nice and slathered, I'm gonna stick one end of it and then start wrapping it around on that glue line. And I'm going for two layers, two visual layers That is just about perfect. Didn't bring scissors. Luckily, I sharpened this knife last night. And there we have it. Let's get that sort of tucked up under there a little bit. Now I'm gonna go around and just smooth the rest of the goop out and sort of use it to get into the cracks and crevices of this rope. Because again, this whole thing is gonna be coated. You're not gonna actually see any of it, but you will see the shape of it. I used way too much glue. No big deal. This stuff is super easy to clean off your fingers. Just like rub your fingers together and you're good. Okay. I want to get a bunch of it in and around this rope because I don't want this rope to peel off later. Well, that looks perfect. All right, I'm gonna let this dry. We'll check in on it later. All right. I've been thinking about the arch. They want this arch to be breakaway because the kids keep trying to do pull-ups on it or run and swing on it, and it rips it off at the base. I've already repaired the base twice, and I can't make it any better than that. And I can't make it break away at the base. It's just too beat up. Now this thing isn't even that sturdy in and of itself. It's got about a 2-inch wide plywood rib that runs through the center of it. And around that plywood rib is foam and then this hard epoxy coating. So I think what I'm gonna do is permanently cement the base back in. And I'm gonna come tomorrow with a saw, with a reciprocating saw, and cut it off probably 2 feet above the ground. A nice clean cut. And then see if I can't make some sort of collar or Velcro or neodymium magnets, I don't know. But I don't want it to break away from the base. I want it to break away slightly higher up so that there's less of it that actually comes off. I don't know how well that's gonna work. We'll see. I came unprepared today. I didn't bring a large enough mixing container for the epoxy coating because I'm used to just digging in the recycle bin. But as you can see behind me, it's trash day. And the recycle bin's already been emptied, so there's nothing in there. And the biggest thing I could find inside were like solo cup size plastic cups and like a to-go soup container. Nothing's gonna be big enough. I need like a 1 gallon container, and I really don't wanna leave and drive to the hardware store and come back. It just wastes the few hours I have each morning here before the customers get here. But I may have to do that. I've got one more recycle bin to search, and if I don't find something in there, I'm gonna have to leave and come back. Ask and ye shall receive. A nice free 5 gallon Napa Auto Parts bucket that has not been used as a toilet. My lucky day. Right, so now I've got a clean 5 gallon bucket. This is the epoxy coating I'm using, this Epsilon impact resistant foam coating. I've never used this before, but apparently this is what the original artist used. I did not use it last time, but after seeing how my repairs held up, I decided to go this route this time. We'll see what happens. Again, I've never used this stuff before, but I've got 3 hours until anybody gets here. So hopefully most of the off-gassing will be done by then. So I have a few different epoxy coatings that I'm using. One of them that I just used, the one I showed you, that Smooth On Epsilon, that was given to me by the handyman who works here at the place where the mini golf course is. And he was around years ago when the original artist built the thing. And he said that's the stuff that guy used. And it was awful. It hardened really, really fast. It pretty much turned into cottage cheese while I was applying it. And I did all the stirring and mixing, followed all the timetables and the pre-mixing, and I really hated it. It also smelled like formaldehyde, because formaldehyde was the #1 ingredient. So it didn't go nearly as far as I needed it to. And I've only got 2 more hours today, but I'm still gonna go ahead and go to the hardware store, try to buy some more epoxy, something that I'm a bit more familiar with, and go as far as I can today, because I've really got to get this done before next Friday. So I'm gonna do that. That's the day. I was not able to get another layer of epoxy down, but I did go to the hardware store and buy the epoxy that I'm familiar with. The stuff I've got years of experience using. I'll show that to you on the next video when I actually get a chance to use it. I came back today, they had some sort of a big business meeting setting up, so I really only had about 1 more hour to work, but I'm really glad I did come back to utilize that hour. I mainly spent the day emptying the remaining caulk out of the tube that I opened, just filling in little gaps and cracks and pock marks and things to make it a little bit smoother when I come back to seal it with the epoxy. But man, looking for damage on these things is a 100% success rate. The more you look, the more you will find. So at a certain point, I just had to call it, because I'm here to take care of all the obvious damage. And I don't think any customer is gonna be down on their hands and knees looking at these things as closely or as thorough as I do. So yeah, it was a good day. Emptied the caulk, come back tomorrow, apply another layer of epoxy.